Hey y'all, it's Jess. Welcome back to Roots and Refuge Farm. Today we are going to be doing the first full garden tour and harvest for the fall 2018 garden. I've actually been holding off picking some stuff in here that really needs to be picked because I wanted to wait until I could video it. This is one of my favorite times of year to garden because it's so nice outside. It's only like 70 degrees right now, and granted it's 9 o'clock in the morning. It'll warm up later this afternoon, but we're just on the brink of some real fall weather. It's so much easier to be outside. And I have to say the garden is looking pretty good. All of the effort that I put into second plantings in August and September are really starting to pay off. Let's go check it out. The ducks found the burn pile from the garden, and there's a bunch of okra seeds in there. They are going to town. I did something a little new this season and decorated out here in front of the garden, and I love it. I actually got picked up to influence a little bit for this company on Instagram, and they sent me some really beautiful stuff, and I'm doing a giveaway for them on Instagram right now where you can win some pieces of this plaid pumpkin collection. So anyway, if you don't follow me on Instagram, go check it out because you might be able to win some of that stuff. It's open until Friday. The eventual plan for this space is that we're going to build some little planters out here on the front, and this doorway is going to have kind of like an arch, a trellis that goes around it. It won't be necessarily arch, but a trellis that goes around it. And I would really love to plant some roses right here by the front. When I went and bought these plants for the front here, I actually got this really large rosemary plant, which will last forever, and I'm excited to have that for all of my fall Thanksgiving cooking. One of my favorite fall recipes is the sweet potato hash. Fresh rosemary just like sets it off. We love that in the fall, so I will do a video soon showing you guys how to make that. It's a very simple recipe that's delicious. Jeremiah calls it Thanksgiving for breakfast because it does have all of those flavors. It's really good. Okay, all ready to take a look at this garden. It has changed quite a bit since the last time we walked through it together. The last time I did a garden tour was the morning we left for Baker Creek. So that's been close to 4 weeks ago. It's miserably windy out here, but I really want to get this shot because we're leaving for Virginia for the Homesteaders of America conference tomorrow. So I want to get this up for you guys before we leave. I have really missed sharing my garden with you this last couple of weeks, and I'm just really excited to show you. So here are a bunch of jalapenos, which many of them I've let go a little bit long, and their skin is starting to like crack. That's just from being on here. They're shriveling a little bit. Now, I have not had much time for canning or just any sort of preserving this last few weeks, and so I just left these out here, and some of them really aren't doing super great. I think what I may do, go ahead and roast them and freeze them. I don't know. I need to figure out something to do with those before they just spoil. Here are some sparkler tip radishes. Now, a lot of these are ready to harvest. You can tell, like, this is a really large one. Right here, you can see it sticking out of the top. Right there. The way I handle a fall garden is quite different than a summer garden. Now, I just showed you those peppers that got left on the plant too long, and they've started to shrivel up and blister. Some of those are probably no good at this point. And the thing is with fruits like that is they tend to get overripe. Same thing during the summer with things like tomatoes and eggplants. I mean, it hits a point where you've got to take it off the vine and figure out what you're going to do with it. Now, root vegetables can be a little bit different. They can get too big, but when it's cool and you're in no risk of them flowering, what I like to do is I like to leave them in the ground until I'm going to do something with them. Like, I might come and pick a whole bunch of radishes if I were going to pickle them. However, if I'm going to roast them and eat them with a meal or eat them in a salad, I kind of like to use my garden as my storage space and come down and pick them up out of the ground as I need them, because then everything stays really fresh. They don't get shriveled from not being in the ground. I just picked this one to show you guys. This is a sparkler radish. This is obviously a very large one because I haven't picked it. There are several more here that are much smaller. And I'll just leave them in the ground till I need them. Then just come pick them, roast them, eat them for lunch, whatever. I'll eat this one today. I'll probably slice it up and put it on a salad here when I get back in the house. You can use radish greens. I've seen people use them to make pesto when they're young. You can do different things with them. Wilted radish greens can be pretty good. I've done recipes before where you kind of saute radishes in a pan with some oil and put some garlic in with it and salt and pepper, and then just dice up young radish leaves. The older ones are a little bit tougher, but young radish leaves, and just wilt them a little bit. Their flavor, now this is an older radish, so the texture's a little weird. The flavor reminds me a little bit of chard. It's kind of earthy, a little bit spicy. I definitely prefer them younger, but just as a little bit wilted in a pan with some roasted radishes and some fried eggs. I put fried eggs with everything, by the way, when it comes to stuff like this. It's pretty good, and it's a good way to use them. Holy smokes. That guy was right there next to where I just pulled off part of a leaf and ate it. I'm glad I did not put that in my mouth. I'm really glad I did not accidentally put that in my mouth. Okay, he can stay out here. This can go in the house. One big radish for lunch. Basically, the way I treat the radishes is I'll just know how many of them are ready to be harvested, and like we'll probably eat roasted radishes with dinner tonight, and I'll just come out right before I start cooking, pick what I want, take them inside and clean them and chop them and all of that. So here are my late planted zinnias, and they have really filled out. These are the ones that I planted I think around the end of August, so they've gotten very established in the last couple of months. I really like these. These were labeled as like a candy cane variety, and they came in different colors. I've got one over there that's white with red stripes, and here's a yellow with red stripes. But I will buy just about any zinnia seeds I can get my hand on, and I got some really neat ones sent to me by some viewers that are green flowers. They're called envy zinnias, and I'm really excited to grow them next year. I've got lots of different colors here. I don't know what variety is what here on these colors because I just planted them all out of different packs. They are really beautiful. Someone asked me how to manage the spacing of plants to get like a nice full zinnia patch like that. And like this here, do you see the yellow flowers here? That is all on one plant. Just that entire thing there is one plant. That's one seed that grew up, and it's had a chance to fill out. Here, these are about 12 to 18 inches apart. That's what I have done on all of my zinnia patches. What you're seeing is a seed that was put in the ground about every 12 or 18 inches. And they just fill out. Now my very established zinnia patches, like the one back there and right when you come in the garden, those have over the course of the season dropped their seeds and filled out. So like there are lots of plants that have come up in between. But what I have planted in order to have these nice full zinnia patches is one seed about every 12 to 18 inches. This is a lime basil, which tastes and smells so wonderful, very citrusy. And here, that's the same thing. All of this came up from the seeds that were dropped from the small plant I planted in the fall. And now this one has already started to go to seed itself. So all this, there's more right back here. Those all reseeded from my one planting in the fall, and they probably will again next year. In this space, I actually sowed carrots, and they didn't really do very well. There are a couple here and there that are kind of popping up, and I haven't put anything else in here just because I have a lot of stuff going. So I might come back through. I've been sowing more radishes in all of the little holes. And this is a chocolate beauty bell pepper, which I've tried to leave them on to ripen to brown. I'm going to go ahead and pick this one because they're getting sun scald. You see this? That is where this pepper, because it was leaning over, it's kind of a little bit of a puny plant. It's not real thick with foliage, and when it leaned over, this was exposed to the sun. So that's a sun scald spot, and you can see that it's already begun to rot a little bit on the inside with that sun scald. Most of this pepper is okay though, so what I'll do is take this in the house, cut that off, and I'll just use the other half of this today, the part that's good. Now out here in the in-ground, as you can tell, there's not much going on here. These okras, I had just let them go entirely. I figured I would save some of the seeds on this, but I haven't done much. And then they started flowering again. Look at this. I've got, I mean, at least a few here. A new flower. They're much smaller than the flowers in the spring, and the okras are kind of bumpy. You can tell the plant's not super healthy, but I just think that's so funny. Aren't okra blossoms beautiful? Our plan in the in-ground garden has been for a while to put our pet pig down here and let her root it up. We explored some different options as far as fencing to keep her in, and what we really wanted to do was to get an electric fence. It's like a netting that's for hogs, and it has a solar box that electrifies it. Actually ended up getting to use our income that we make from our Amazon affiliate links, from you guys purchasing from our affiliate links. We've saved that up over the months of doing YouTube, and we were able to purchase that pig fencing with that from Amazon. So it'll be here this week. When we get back from Virginia, we are going to set that up. And we actually have a little bit of a cool announcement. I will show you more about it later and tell you more about it later. But when we get back from Virginia, there are going to be a few more pigs here on the farm that we're going to put to work. Look at the zinnias coming up over on the other side of the fence. That's funny, just seeds must have gotten carried over there. Here are some cabbages. I'm hoping everything in here has time to produce before it gets too cold. It might not, in which case that's fine. I have enjoyed growing it. But I planted these from seed a couple of months ago. These are Brunswick cabbages, and I'm not 100% sure what we'll get off of them. So the sugar magnolia tendril peas, some of my absolute favorites, are coming up here. They're a few feet tall, and just saw this. We've got a pea. We have a few blossoms and a pea, so I'm glad. I think we'll get a pretty good harvest off of these. And right here on the end of this row is what I am probably the most excited about in the garden right now. I've got little gherkins coming back. These plants are covered in blossoms. I picked 2 yesterday and ate them fresh, and they were amazing. These are Parisian pickling cucumbers. It's an heirloom that you harvest as gherkins. Full size, they only get like this long, and they'll get pretty good size around and more smooth, but when you pick them really small, they're good and warty. They're just like what you expect from a little gherkin. They have great flavor. They are really mild, real fresh. I realized when I picked those 2 off yesterday how much I really take for granted the cucumbers in the early summer, because they grow so prolifically that I get tired of them. I mean, we eat so many of them fresh. We make so many pickles. I get tired of picking them because they just come on so fast and heavy. And this little plant, I wasn't sure if I got my cucumbers in time. We have such a weird growing season. It's just so hot, and then fall's really short, and then it gets relatively cool. But it's kind of hard because a lot of the things that you're trying to grow in fall weather, it's too hot when you're trying to germinate them in August. So I wasn't sure on my cucumbers. I have one other plant coming up. I don't know if the other ones are really small, the other ones I have. But this, I'm going to get a good amount of cucumbers off in the next few weeks. And I am so excited. I ate those cucumbers yesterday and had a little bit of a moment because I was like, cucumbers, I never appreciated you enough before. Here, growing up the fence, are scarlet runner beans. You can kind of see there's one that's reached the top and has some blossoms. The zinnias, of course, are poking through pretty hard. The other side of this row, I actually haven't planted anything new in these holes. My marigolds are so big, and I just decided to just let them have their space. There are still some pepper plants producing in there, and I'm just not putting anything extra. On the other side, on this trellis, there are peas. They're coming up really slow. So I'll just have to see where they're at whenever we get back next week. Here on the end are more magnolia peas, and they are actually setting some peas as well. The sugar magnolia tendril pea is a recently developed pea. So it's not an heirloom. It's developed from heirlooms. It's open pollinated. So it's not like a sterile hybrid or a hybrid that isn't stabilized. You can save the seeds. However, most of the pods are purple, but just like the one I showed you a minute ago, occasionally they put off a green pod. So that just has to do with the genetics of the plant. These are hanging on to each other. I need to let my peas go. Here we go. They're about halfway up this fence. I'm really curious to see how much they grow when we're gone. A week makes a big difference in a garden. And looky here. Now this plant, these plants on this side, these make me think of you guys, because when I did my very first garden tour in June, these plants were just barely poking out of the soil. I mean, they had just germinated. So their cucamelons are very slow growing, also called Mexican sour gherkins. And honestly, these plants aren't putting off just a whole lot. Here's one, a little bit small, but they've all been pretty small. Okay, so I had to adjust my camera to blow everything else out so you can see this. This is this thing on the end of this garden bed. And there's another fuzzy caterpillar. I don't touch any of them. I don't know enough about fuzzy caterpillars to know which ones are okay and which ones are not okay. And I just don't feel like I would get enough joy from touching a fuzzy caterpillar to make it worth the risk. Back to my cucamelons. Cucamelons, if you've been watching my garden tours for very long, you've seen quite a lot of these. They're also called Mexican sour gherkins. And if you are getting into planting garden now, these are a good one for the list. They're fun. They take up very little space. I mean, like one small trellis can give you enough plants to have enough fruit to do something with. And they're just really neat. They're neat little fruits. They look like tiny watermelons. This is a plant I picked up at a nursery. Actually, it's a peacock white flowering kale. I've never grown it before. I was just excited that that nursery had fall starts, and so I bought some, and that was one of them. This little area right here is probably my favorite area in the garden right now. These two rows just framed right here. I have been messaging with my friend Rose this morning. It's starting to rain. And she has been planning a little bit of a get-together at the Homesteaders of America conference. And it kind of started as like just some YouTubers were going to get together. And I think it's kind of morphing into something a little different because she had the idea of bringing seeds to swap. And so a lot of people are wanting in. And so I'm going to call her and get the information about that because it is going to be a public thing and we're going to do a seed swap. And yes, I'm going to bring seeds to swap. So if you are coming to Homesteaders of America, you're going to want to make a plan to be meeting us. I need to find out what the time is from her. So let's call Rose from Wholesome Roots.
Hello?
Hey.
Hey.
So I'm filming a garden tour and I need the information to tell my viewers about the lunch, the meetup lunch and seed swap in case they want to come and meet with us and bring seeds to swap.
Awesome. Okay, it's going to be held Friday during the lunch break of the conference. And it'll be right there on the conference grounds. We're just going to pick a picnic table and we're just going to bring our lunches and swap lunches. I mean, not swap lunches, swap seeds.
I mean, I hear you're a pretty good cook, so like...
Well, you know, if I had that ability, with being out of town, it makes it a little hard, but it would be fun to swap lunches. But yeah, my friend Trisha at Willow Creek Homestead and I were thinking about the conference and we were talking about it and we were like, we got to find a way that we can see all the other people, you know, and we were like, well, let's do a lunch. Let's invite everybody to have lunch with us on one of the picnic tables. And it just kind of grew from there. And then I was like, oh, seed swap.
Yes. Awesome.
That's my favorite.
So 12 noon on Friday at the picnic tables, seed swap and meet up. A lot of awesome YouTubers are going to be there, and we're so excited to get to meet all of these people. So awesome, Rose. I love you. I will talk to you later. I can't wait to see you this weekend.
I can't wait to hug you.
Bye.
Bye.
Aren't you a sight for sore eyes? And tight.
How sore your eyes are.
Did you bring me coffee? You ready to go to Virginia?
We're going to Virginia?
Now down the second row here, you can see the peas that are coming up. These are actually a bush pea that don't go that high, so they're not going to climb up these trellises really tall. I am going to tie up some sort of supports between the T-post here to hold those up. They're also growing all underneath this trellis on this side. A couple of different types, like Progress 9, Oregon Sugar Snap is one of them. Just a couple of different peas that don't require a lot of support. My original zinnia patch is looking pretty wild. It's mostly reseeded or dead, but the pollinators still like it, so I'm just leaving it there until the frost. Now here are some cabbages that I bought as starts from a nursery. They're Savoy cabbage, and they're actually doing pretty well. They've transplanted in well. Obviously my marigolds are nice and filled in. This is a lettuce called Red Sail, and that was a start that I purchased at the nursery. It has a really pretty modeling to the leaves there. I really like this one. I'm excited for it to grow up a little bit to get to taste it and see how it tastes. I really like soft red lettuces. They are typically really nice mild flavor. I like the texture of them. I only really like crunchy lettuce on certain things, like as a texture accent on certain foods, like on a burger or whatever. I like a crunchy lettuce, but as far as eating salads, I much prefer softer lettuces. That's just a preference, but butterheads and romaine types is really what I tend to go for because of that soft texture. Here I've got some like your typical blue curled kale coming up, and down here a kale called Red Russian that's a really pretty color. It's, I guess, technically a purple kale, but you can see it does have some real red and pink tones to it. So I really am excited about that it's doing very well. Here is my other zinnia patch, which I'm so glad I let this thing just remain and just go wild. As you can see, it's mostly fallen out of the bed and is growing up. It's reseeded all over the place, but I love this. I will always have zinnia patches in my garden. I've never had a problem being short pollinators this year. I mean, they've just always been covering these things. And here, all of these extra zinnias that are just coming up all over, these are ones that the seeds fell off the original plants that I planted, and I've just let them go and the frost will take them out. Here are some more tendril peas coming up this trellis, and on the other side here are dragon tongue bush beans. Just all right here is dragon tongue bush beans, and right here, if you'll remember in the spring, this is where my tomatillos were, and right here one has come back. And in my process of just not being wildly attentive in the garden, because we were dealing with grief and loss, it got pretty big. So yeah, this is a tomatillo. I don't think it'll have a chance to ripen anything before the frost, but I've just left it there. It's not hurting anything. The beans are doing just fine in spite of it, so random large tomatillo in the middle of my dragon tongue beans. Here's the other candy cane zinnia I was telling you about. I just think that's so pretty. These on the end are actually Georgia collards. I don't know how much they're gonna fill out, but I know everything that I'm showing you that is small like this, they can withstand some frost. Gardening in Arkansas in the fall means kind of taking a gamble because our weather is really kind of sporadic and unpredictable. We can have really mild winters that will have a random 2 weeks where it's like 6 degrees. And then the rest of the time, we have highs in the 50s. It's very up and down. And so I've got a lot of things here, like really small broccoli plants, really small cabbages, collard greens. And I don't know how much I'm going to get off of those things. They can all withstand a light freeze. And so there is a sincere chance that I could be harvesting this stuff into December. That might happen because it might not freeze hard enough to do them in. Usually we don't get really cold until like January. But then again, we could have 2 inches of ice dumped on us in November. It has happened before. So I planted all of this kind of on the off chance that I might get something out of it. I've got 3-inch broccoli plants. I might get something out of them. I might not. It's fine either way. These in the second square bed here are cauliflowers and more red sail lettuce. And here is my big ashwagandha plant, which I'm gonna need to figure out how to protect somewhat in the cold. And these are tomatoes that volunteered, which I intended on potting these and putting them in the greenhouse. And I may still do that, but they're pretty established. So I don't know how well they're going to take to being transferred. It might be more prudent to try to build a cover over this bed here. I intended to put those in pots in the greenhouse, but then of course everything happened with Jeremiah's mom, so I didn't, and this is how much they grew in just a few weeks. I mean, as you can see, they're already flowering. They're pretty established. This is 2 plants that's kind of intertangled. Here I have a ton of marjoram that has exploded since the okra has been removed from this bed. It's gotten a lot of light, and what I will do with that is right before it freezes, I will cut all that back, take it in the house, hang it up to dry, and find stuff to do with it. Right here these are rainbow chard, all different colors. And here is actually one of my big tasks for today. It is time to harvest the arroz con pollo peppers. Now these 2 plants here are just really heavy with fruits. That one has a little bit on it. And then back here, these have just gotten massive. And as you can see, I mean, they're just loaded down. And I mean, I still have a lot of immature green fruits here. So I'll have more to pick when we get back. Arroz con pollo is a Cuban seasoning pepper. And if you have been here very long, you have heard me sing its praises, because it is genuinely one of the most unique peppers I have ever tasted. I have a really hard time describing it. It has a very it tastes like Cuban food. That's the only thing I know what to say. It's really, really good. Up until this point, I've only eaten them fresh in the garden, or I've taken a handful and sauteed them in with eggs. You'll see a trend. I eat a lot of sauteed peppers and eggs. My plan from the beginning with these plants was to dry the peppers and make a seasoning powder. So today I'm going through and I'm picking the many ripe fruits off this plant so that I can put them in my dehydrator and dehydrate them before we go out of town tomorrow evening. That was a lot of peppers. This is a sweet Marconi red pepper, and it's so good. I used to come down in the summer to the garden without eating breakfast. I don't eat breakfast down here because there's so much to eat, and there's not a lot to eat now. But this pepper is hitting the spot. I actually had an idea of picking this 200 arroz con pollo peppers. It's a lot of seeds. Now, I won't have time to test the germination before I leave for Virginia, but pepper seeds do not require fermenting because they're dry. They don't have any sort of gel around them like a tomato seed or a cucumber seed. So I'm going to crack some of these open when I'm putting them in the dehydrator and lay the seeds out, and I'm gonna package these to bring to the seed swap. So if you've heard me rave about arroz con pollo peppers all year and you have not already bought seeds to grow your own, make sure you come to the seed swap at the Homesteaders of America conference. There are as many green peppers still on that plant as I just picked. Talk about a heavy producer. Now this is exciting. Down here, almost to the end of the garden, I have one massive squash plant. It's actually a zucchini squash. My goats had come through this gate after I replanted several squashes back here, and they ate all of them, and they ate this one down. It literally had one tiny bit of a leaf left on a stem. I thought surely that wouldn't be enough for it to photosynthesize, but it came back. It lived. It has zucchini on it. I saw this yesterday and I should have picked it because it's got kind of big, but it still feels pretty tender, though it's a little oddly shaped. And here are just a couple more. I'm gonna go ahead and this one for sure. Not the best way to do it, but we are gonna have to eat this today, so I went ahead and pulled it off. You typically want to cut squash off the vine because they break so easily, but I went ahead and took the risk because I knew I have to cook this today anyway, or else it's gonna spoil while we're gone. And there are a couple more small ones, and honestly, it's gonna be huge if I wait till I get back to pick that. The other little ones probably just will be huge. There's nothing I can do about it. So, my first fall squash harvest. So this bed fell prey to the goats. There are a couple things coming up here that are like lettuces, some greens, just little things. I had planned some turnips, but they got pulled up. I'll probably go ahead and sow that with some more radishes, something that'll come up really fast. I'm planning on coming down and literally just putting radishes everywhere where there's space, like all of these places here where you see the space before we leave for Virginia. I'm gonna throw radish seeds all over the garden, all different kinds, so that I can get those to a certain point before it gets so cold that they'll stunt, because they'll stay good in the ground through the cold weather, and I can just come out and harvest them as I need them. They'll stop growing so fast once it cools off and the light gets less and less, but I'll be able to harvest them throughout the winter and just have radish storage in the ground. Another big harvest of lemon balm coming. I'll probably also harvest some of the peppermint that's on this side. This space is shaping up pretty well. The noodle beans are in full swing again. As you can see, some of them are a little bit big. I just missed them over this last couple weeks. I didn't do very much cooking. And at this point I'm gonna leave them so I can save the seeds, but here are some good ones. I will probably wait, come down this evening and pick those. We're gonna eat a big meal out of the garden tonight before we go out of town, because I probably won't cook tomorrow night. These are salad greens. I've already harvested some of them. They're really nice. It was a blend called Baby Greens Blend. So I'm not sure what kind they are. That's my one downfall of using any sort of prepackaged blend from a seed company, because I'll forget what kind it is. Here are some late sown cucumbers that I don't know if I'll get anything from. They were an early variety, but I'm not sure. And this, as you can tell, looks a lot like the tomatillo because it is a ground cherry, which is kind of like a cherry tomatillo. We call this garden candy. It's absolutely one of my favorite things that grows in the garden. This is the pineapple ground cherry. This reseeded from the plant that was here, and I'm hoping that maybe it'll ripen some fruit before it gets too cold. Here are more squash plants here, and here's another one. These have not set flowers yet. This is just a gray zucchini is what it was labeled as. Whenever my other squash got eaten by the goats, I went through the seed packets that I had and I found the one that was the earliest, and this was a 45-day variety, so maybe we'll get something here. A volunteer tomato, may or may not be able to be transplanted. Here's some lettuce. That's a butter crunch, just a butter crunch head lettuce. I think that'll do pretty well right there. My plan is for some of these little places is, if we're able to swing it time-wise, to build just some little like greenhouse type cold frames that I can set over this area. So I don't have to cover the whole bed, but I can cover that small rectangle where those are growing. It's starting to rain. I'm gonna go real quick through the rest of this so we can see, because I really want to show you guys. Here are the green beans that I sowed late in the summer. There's not a whole lot coming off of these yet, but I will definitely be harvesting those when we get back in town. So this is a neat lettuce called Paris Island. I missed that right here in the middle of this trellis. Those are Virafonte purple pole beans is what they're called, and they are, I mean, they're getting it. Like you can see, they're coming all down the end of the trellis. I wish I'd had more of those seeds and sowed this whole trellis with those. Next year I will be more mindful to make sure I get my trellises covered for fall. As you can see, a lot of these aren't, And even had I just sowed the green beans that I had a lot of, they're nitrogen fixers. It would have been beneficial for the soil, and it would have been really pretty. And I could have put up a lot more beans for the winter. So live and learn. I didn't do that. Here are some cabbages. That right there, that is burgundy okra coming back up from the plant that was here in the summer. That's some broccoli right here, and I'd actually planted broccoli all in here, but there's some baby deer. And the baby deer, I guess it's an orphan pair of fawns. They still have spots on them, and they have made their way into the garden a few times. We just chase them off. We finally secured the gate so that they would stop coming in here, but they ate the broccoli plants. So where this cabbage is actually was broccoli first. That's why those broccoli plants are quite a lot larger than this cabbage. The cabbage I got at the nursery, it's just a literally it was labeled purple cabbage. That's one of the downsides of buying started plants. You don't always get the interesting heirlooms with the stories. You get purple cabbage. So it is what it is. It was better than nothing. This is sweet alyssum. That is back. I had planted sweet alyssum under all of my cucumber trellises in the spring because it's a wonderful habitat for beneficial insects. Here in this little area right in the middle of the garden, these are pink eye peas, and some of them are getting ready to be at the shelled stage, which of course we shell these. They're like black eye peas, just a little lighter. The package for these stated that they were a bush variety, and they kind of went wild, so I stuck some structures in there that they could crawl over, and they've crawled all over them. They're doing pretty well. I'll get a good harvest off of those. Here are just some kind of scraggler peppers that are remaining. Obviously, I've got sunflowers here and there. That is a massive basil plant, Genovese basil, which has gone completely to seed. The basil at this point is no good. It tastes awful from being so seedy. However, if you look closely, you can see there are just bees all over this. So I've left that for the pollinators to have something to enjoy in the garden. And this trellis has a massive cucumber. It's called Missouri. It's an Indian cucumber, and I wasn't sure that I was gonna get anything off of this, but it's had a major growth spurt just in the last couple of days. And looky there, I've got fruit set. I'm excited about that. I've also got this persistent bindweed that I've pulled off multiple times that keeps coming up, and noodle beans that reseeded themselves here after spring. This bed is the messiest place in my garden. As you can see, it's just like a hot mess of plants and weeds. I've got a lot of peppers I can pick in here. These are all anchos. I'm gonna dehydrate these and make a chili powder. And I've got a lot. There's some poblanos. They're still green, which you can eat them stuffed green or let them turn red and make chili powder out of them. And they're all over. They're just growing all through this basil. This is holy basil. It reseeded itself into this pot. So yeah, this little area is definitely pretty wild, pretty much got a mind of its own. I like it. I can dig a wild garden. That was actually a totally unintentional garden pun. I know I'm all over the place, but it's like steadily drizzling, and I'm kind of just like, crazy zinnia patch at the front. There's some more lettuce right there, and some pansies that I put in. Pansies bloom well in cool weather, and the frost will not kill the plants. Might make the blossoms wither, but the plants will live through the frost. And then possibly, if they live all the way through the winter, blossom again in the spring. Someone asked me last night about my Tabasco plants. Look at these things. Still wildly covered, lots more blossoms. They're huge. That's 3 plants. They are taller than me now. Of course, they're in a raised bed, but still, just so massive. Those 3 plants have produced gallons of peppers this year. This bed I intentionally sowed with things that would all stay really low. The gardening technique that I kind of ascribe to, which I didn't even know what it was when I started. I designed my garden this way because Jeremiah and I, putting our heads together on it, just thought this would be pretty. The long beds, the symmetry, the archways, just the way everything is really diversely planted. That was all just coming from being fairly artistic as a person and saying, I like this, this looks good. But after I'd put it all in, I learned about Poteau J gardening, which is a French term. I mean, like, from what I understand from those of you who are French, have explained to me that people call their Poteau Js, like, that's just what they call their vegetable gardens. However, what I've read about different gardening design and stuff is that Poteau Js it's typically it's an artistic garden. It's a beautiful garden, and the history of it is it comes back from monastery gardens, you know, centuries ago, where they were meant to be places of sanctuary and a lot of beauty was incorporated. So it's not the, you know, uniform rows of an in-ground garden that you might be used to seeing. There's a lot of interest in texture and variety and design. And so typically speaking, if I am planting a garden bed, I'm going to try to vary everything in that bed. There's going to be a little bit of every different color I can incorporate, different heights, different textures. I'll put trellises in. I just want to bring visual interest to the bed as well as growing food functionally. This bed, however, I totally broke that rule and I grew everything low because I want to build a cover over this bed to extend my growing season into the hard frost. That is going to have to wait, obviously, until we get back, and we're not looking at frost until the end of October anyway, and everything in this bed can handle a light frost just fine. So all of these things are really low to the ground. I'm not putting any trellises in. And let's take a look at what's in here. In the middle, those are some watermelon radishes, which I just sowed like a week ago. They come up so fast. Here I've got some broccoli rabe, some purple cabbages here on one side and green cabbages over on the other side. Both of those were started from at a nursery, so they're nothing special as far as variety goes. Pansies in the middle because I couldn't help but throw in a little bit of visual interest. And down here on the end, sowed in the middle, are a black Spanish radish. I just put those seeds in the ground yesterday, so they're not up yet. And here I've got some good curly kale. It's a purple variety. You can see there's a little bit of color on those stems. The leaves are green. But so this bed is going to be what I cover and try to extend through the winter. We'll see how it goes. All right, we're almost to the end. This is a lettuce mix. It was a started 6-pack, 2 started 6-packs from a nursery, and it just said lettuce mix. So I have no idea what these varieties are. I mostly wanted them for some color. I probably have more lettuce than we can eat going right now, but we'll share it with our friends and our family. These should do well into the cold. I've got some peas right here, more tendril peas. Here are some bush peas that are kind of up against this trellis. And right on the other side there, those 2 plants are walking stick kale. Benjamin really wanted to put more flowers in. We bought a little pack of those, and he planted those with me here the other day. Here I've got some kind of scraggling pepper plants. They're all pretty much on their last leg. I probably need to rip them out, but I'm not going to do that before we go out of town. Some massive China rose radishes here. Those will probably be what I come pick tonight in order to roast for dinner, because they need to come out of the ground. They're huge. Cucumber plants, I highly doubt that gives me anything before the frost. More jalapenos here. Need to do something with those. This is a row of an early green bean that I planted. It's a bush bean. Goes all the way down. It's flowering really nicely, starting to set some small beans. I'll probably get quite a lot off of that before it gets cold. And in the middle there, kind of overshadowed by those green beans, I guess I planted those too close together. See if you can see here what I'm talking about. Like, These are some really long parts of these plants. I want my chard to live. Here we've got some turnips. These are yellow turnips. I think they're called golden globe turnips. Now I could go ahead and harvesting these greens, taking a few leaves off of each plant, leaving enough that the plant can still develop a good root and photosynthesize. I'm not going to because we're about to go out of town and so I won't have time to cook them before we leave. But when we come back, I will probably do that. I'll start pulling some turnip greens, make some good southern greens for dinner. It's like my favorite. Okay. Now I have absolutely left these China rose radishes in the ground way too long. It's a little embarrassing, but I'm going to show you this because it's pretty impressive. It's all split. Oh my God. Now that, my friends, is a radish. These are supposed to be like 5 inches. That's when you're supposed to harvest them. I probably should have harvested them like around the day my mother-in-law died. I mean, they were like at the point then, but obviously I wasn't harvesting them and people brought us food. I didn't turn my stove on for like a week and that's really unusual for me. And so yeah, these got unusably large. There are some here that are still usable. I will use them tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and give this to the pig and just make her little heart happy because this will make her day. Look, that is a massive radish. This is called China rose. They're pretty big. I wanna see if I can find one that's like a normal size. So this is when you're supposed to harvest these. I mean, they're a good sized radish. That's not small. It's about 5 inches. It's still kind of nice and smooth on the side, not a whole lot of offshoot roots. So this is when these would be good to harvest. Look at my morning glories, they finally made it.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. That's the Grandpa Ott purple variety of morning glory. Okay guys, the drizzling is coming down a little heavier and it doesn't seem that it's going to stop. I think it's just gonna get worse. We did get through the garden. I think you all saw everything. I'm probably gonna go grab a few more of these peppers and some green beans, but I'm gonna take my camera inside so it doesn't get too wet. You are going to be at Homesteaders of America. Make sure you comment down below. I'm looking forward to getting to meet all of you guys. And when we get back, we will take another walk through the garden, see what else is coming up. Again, thank you for watching. Thank you for walking this journey with us. I absolutely adore getting to share this most special place and passion of mine with you. I bless you. Until next time.